It began on a strip of sun-baked coastline in North Africa, a place that seemed insignificant compared to the great empires of the ancient world. But from this narrow shore would rise a city that would one day challenge Greece, dominate Spain, colonize the islands of the Western Mediterranean, and wage epic wars against Rome itself. A city built by exiles, traders, and dreamers. A city that would grow into an empire ruled not by swords alone, but by the power of wealth, ships, and strategy. This is the story of Carthage, how a small Phoenician colony became one of the greatest powers the Mediterranean had ever seen. Our story begins over 3,000 years ago, in the ancient city of Tyre, a glittering island kingdom on the coast of modern-day Lebanon. Tyre was one of the great Phoenician city-states, masters of trade, shipbuilding, and navigation. The Phoenicians were the seafarers of the ancient world, merchants who sailed across the Mediterranean, founding colonies from Cyprus to Spain. They traded cedar wood, glass, textiles, and purple dye, the color of kings. But while their ships brought wealth, Tyre's power was not unchallenged. Around 830 BCE, internal conflicts and Assyrian expansion threatened Phoenician independence. According to legend, the turning point came when a princess named Elissa, better known to the Greeks as Dido, fled Tyre after her brother murdered her husband. Seeking refuge across the sea, she led a group of followers westward, eventually landing on the coast of North Africa. There she struck a clever deal with the local Berber king. He promised her as much land as could be covered by an ox hide. So Dido cut the hide into thin strips, laid them end to end, and claimed a vast area along the coast. On this site she founded the city of Carthage, the new city, or as we know it today, Carthage. Whether or not Dido herself ever lived, archaeology tells us that around the 9th century BCE, Tyrian colonists indeed founded a settlement near modern Tunis. At first, it was just one of many Phoenician trading posts scattered across the Western Mediterranean. But Carthage's position was extraordinary. It sat on a natural harbor, with easy access to both Africa and Europe, perfectly located to control trade routes stretching from the Levant to Spain. In an age when wealth flowed along the sea, Carthage's harbor became its heart, a masterpiece of engineering that would later astonish even the Romans. By the 7th century BCE, the little colony was thriving. While Tyre and the older Phoenician cities fell under Assyrian and later Babylonian domination, Carthage grew in independence. It became a hub of commerce where ships from every corner of the Mediterranean gathered, bringing metals from Iberia, grain from Sicily, ivory from Africa, and fine crafts from the east. The city's population swelled with traders, artisans, and farmers. Its hinterland, the fertile lands of modern Tunisia, turned into one of the most productive agricultural regions of the ancient world. Carthaginian farmers mastered irrigation and crop rotation, producing wheat, olives, and grapes in abundance. Over time, the balance of power shifted. Carthage was no longer just a colony. It was the leader of a growing network of settlements across the Western Mediterranean. As Tyre weakened, Carthage took over its role as the dominant Phoenician power. By the 6th century BCE, it commanded an empire of trade stretching from North Africa to Sardinia, Corsica, and southern Spain. Its colonies, like Motia in Sicily and Gades, modern Cadiz in Spain, served as stepping stones for commerce and military expansion. But as Carthage rose, so too did its rivals. The Greeks, expanding westward from their city-states, began to colonize southern Italy and Sicily. This brought them into direct competition with Carthage for control of trade routes and resources. The island of Sicily became the frontier between two worlds, the Phoenician and the Greek. Carthage was ready for the challenge. Its government was unlike the monarchies of Greece or the empires of the East. It was an oligarchic republic, ruled by a council of wealthy merchant families and two elected magistrates known as suffetes. Power came not from divine kingship, but from commerce and naval strength. The Carthaginians believed in profit, order, and expansion. Their god Baal-Hamon and goddess Tanit watched over them, and their priests performed elaborate rituals, sometimes involving sacrifices that would later horrify their enemies. Carthage's navy became the largest in the Western Mediterranean. Its shipbuilders perfected the design of the bireme and trireme, fast and deadly vessels that could ram enemy ships or block entire coastlines. Carthaginian sailors were renowned for their seamanship. Their navigators even ventured beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, into the Atlantic. One famous explorer, Hanno the Navigator, recorded a voyage down the west coast of Africa, describing encounters with strange lands and people, possibly as far south as modern Cameroon. By the 5th century BCE, Carthage stood as the unchallenged master of the western seas. But its dominance was constantly tested. The Greeks of Sicily, led by powerful cities like Syracuse, resisted Carthaginian influence. A series of wars erupted, brutal, drawn-out conflicts known as the Sicilian Wars. Generations of Carthaginian generals fought for control of the island. Among them was Hamilcar, who led campaigns that brought parts of Sicily under Carthaginian rule. But the wars were costly. Each time Carthage gained ground, the Greeks struck back. The balance of power swung endlessly, draining both sides. Carthage also faced challenges closer to home. Native Libyan and Numidian tribes sometimes rebelled against its rule, resenting Carthaginian taxes and dominance. But the city's wealth and organization usually prevailed. Carthage was a pragmatic empire. It relied heavily on mercenaries drawn from across its territories: Libyans, Iberians, Gauls, even Greeks. This allowed the city to field massive armies without risking too many of its own citizens. Yet it was also a weakness. Loyalty bought with silver could vanish when the money stopped flowing. Despite these pressures, Carthage continued to expand. It built new colonies along the North African coast, fortified its cities in Spain, and maintained trade relations with Egypt and even Etruria in Italy. Its prosperity was legendary. The Greek historian Aristotle wrote admiringly of Carthage's constitution, calling it one of the best-governed states in the world. In Carthage, wealth translated directly into power. The great families controlled vast estates and fleets, and their influence shaped every decision of the state. Then, in the 4th century BCE, the balance of the Mediterranean shifted once again. In the east, Alexander the Great destroyed the Persian Empire, and new Hellenistic kingdoms rose in its place. But in the west, Carthage remained supreme, until it encountered a new and unexpected rival. Across the sea on the Italian peninsula, a small but ambitious republic was beginning to expand: Rome. At first, Rome and Carthage were allies of convenience. Both wanted to keep the Greek pirates and traders in check, but their friendship would not last. As Rome unified Italy and turned its gaze toward Sicily, conflict became inevitable. The First Punic War broke out in 264 BCE, a clash not only of armies but of civilizations. For the first time, Carthage faced an enemy as determined and organized as itself. The war raged for over 2 decades. Carthage's navy dominated at first, but Rome adapted quickly, building a fleet of its own and developing the corvus, a boarding bridge that turned sea battles into infantry fights, Rome's specialty. After years of stalemate and horrific losses, Carthage finally sued for peace. The terms were harsh. Carthage had to pay massive reparations and give up Sicily, its most valuable possession. But Carthage was not finished. In the decades that followed, it rebuilt its economy and turned its ambitions westward, to the rich lands of Iberia. There, under the leadership of the Barcid family, particularly Hamilcar Barca and later his son Hannibal, Carthage created a new empire. Silver from the Spanish mines filled its treasuries, new cities rose, armies were trained, and the stage was set for revenge. The rise of Carthage from a colony of Tyre to a Mediterranean power was one of the most remarkable transformations in history. Through trade, diplomacy, and relentless ambition, it built a maritime empire that rivaled any of its age. But its success contained the seeds of its downfall. The same wealth that fueled its rise bred jealousy and fear in others. And across the sea, Rome, disciplined, ruthless, and hungry, was waiting. The next chapter of Carthage's story would be written not in trade agreements, but in blood. Hannibal would lead his armies across the Alps, elephants and all, to strike at the heart of Rome. For a time, Carthage would come closer than anyone else in history to destroying the Roman Republic. But that is a story for another time. For now, the legacy of early Carthage stands as a testament to human ingenuity. A people of traders and sailors built an empire without the need for vast lands or endless armies. They mastered the sea, turning commerce into power, diplomacy into domination. Even after its final destruction at the end of the Third Punic War, Carthage's influence lived on, in Roman agriculture, in trade networks, and in the very fabric of Mediterranean civilization. From the legend of Queen Dido to the disciplined councils of merchant princes, from humble beginnings on a foreign shore to the throne of maritime supremacy, the rise of Carthage was a saga of vision, resilience, and ambition. It proved that empire could be forged not only by conquest, but by commerce, and that sometimes the mightiest walls are not built of stone, but of ships. And though Rome would one day burn it to the ground, Carthage's spirit endured and lost in every port, every marketplace, every merchant who dared to sail beyond the horizon. The new city may have fallen, but its legacy still whispers across the waves, that once from nothing a people rose to challenge the world.